West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, Lindsey Graham is now afraid of himself, a quisling afraid of his shadow. And Lindsey Graham proved that tonight by going on Fox to lie about what he said on the Fox propaganda channel on Sunday. Lindsey Graham is now afraid of his own words, afraid to repeat them, so he lied about them tonight. Lindsey Graham did not dare to repeat what he said, didn't dare to repeat it tonight after 2 days of relentless criticism of Lindsey Graham, including on this program last night, and culminating at the end of the day today with Joe Biden, of all people, attacking Lindsey Graham for saying that if Donald Trump is indicted, there will be rioting in the streets. And I say Joe Biden, of all people, because the very last thing Joe Biden wants to do is attack a United States senator. In Joe Biden's Senate, and in the Senate where I worked in the 1990s, that just was not done. But no one in the United States Senate in those days reached the peak of indecency that Lindsey Graham reached Sunday night when he said there will be rioting in the streets. Not even Strom Thurmond. Lindsey Graham is a United States Senator because Strom Thurmond could not live forever, even though he tried. South Carolina's very senior Senator Strom Thurmond chose not to run for re-election to the Senate when he was 100 years old, thereby creating the opening for Congressman Lindsey Graham to move up in 2002 in that election. The next year, Strom Thurmond died at age 101. 6 months later, we discovered that Strom Thurmond had a secret. A big one. Strom Thurmond had a daughter who he never publicly acknowledged. She was born before Strom Thurmond was married. He was 23 years old, and the teenage girl he got pregnant, who was working in his parents' home, was 16 years old. Strom Thurmond's first child, Essie Mae Washington Williams, who died in 2013, was black. Strom Thurmond, always knowing that he had a black daughter, built his political career on racism and segregation. And South Carolina's white voters rewarded him for his racist, segregationist policies and for the filibusters against civil rights legislation that he joined on the Senate floor. Like Lindsey Graham, Strom Thurmond never apologized for anything. But even Strom Thurmond never said, if the leader of my party is indicted, there will be rioting in the streets. No senator has ever said that. When a special prosecutor was investigating Republican President Richard Nixon, Republican Senator Strom Thurmond did not say, if Nixon is charged with crimes or impeached, there will be rioting in the streets. Even Strom Thurmond knew a United States senator should never say that. Never. What explains Lindsey Graham? His weakness in fawning over Donald Trump is something we had never seen in a senator before Donald Trump invaded and conquered the Republican Party. Whatever explains Lindsey Graham, we may never know. Perhaps we'll learn more about him 6 months after his death, as we did with Strom Thurmond. Maybe in that peculiar South Carolina Republican Senate tradition, Lindsey Graham has a secret. And the person Lindsey Graham knows who loves secrets the most is Donald Trump. We now know that Donald Trump has been happily riding around in golf carts in Florida, knowing that in the basement he had a government document identified in the FBI inventory of the FBI search as Info Ray, President of France. Donald Trump showed Lindsey Graham what he is capable of in the 2016 presidential campaign, when Lindsey Graham was still campaigning against Donald Trump and accurately criticizing Donald Trump. And then this happened.
He gave me his number, and I found the card. I wrote the number down. I don't know if it's the right number. Let's try it. 202-228-0292. I don't know. Maybe it's, it's 3-4 years ago, so maybe it's an old number. 202-228-0292. So, I don't know. Give it a shot.
It was Lindsey Graham's phone number. Donald Trump gave out Lindsey Graham's private cell phone number on TV. Imagine the fear Lindsey Graham has lived with since then, the fear of Donald Trump, the fear of what Donald Trump could reveal about him. And Lindsey Graham knows that Donald Trump is a pathological liar, so Lindsey Graham knows Donald Trump could say something about him that is false, or say something about Lindsey Graham that Donald Trump couldn't prove. That conscience question, what are you going to tell your children and grandchildren you did to stop Donald Trump, does not apply to Lindsey Graham. Unlike Strom Thurmond, Lindsey Graham does not have children and is not suspected of having children that we don't know about. Never been married, doesn't even have a dog. He has, by outward appearance, no one and nothing to love more than the title senator. And that probably explains Lindsey Graham as well as anything can. He will do anything and say anything to hold on to the title of senator, a title he knows Donald Trump could rip away from him by endorsing another Republican to run against Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. If that is the explanation of Lindsey Graham, think of the hollowness of that man. Think of the emptiness where conscience is supposed to reside in him. The two most miserable politicians in America tonight are Lindsey Graham and the man he serves, Donald Trump. Both fighting criminal investigations of their conduct. When Lindsey Graham went on Fox tonight, he was not asked a single question about the subpoena for him to testify to a Georgia grand jury about his and Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the presidential election in Georgia. But the host did show Lindsey Graham what Joe Biden said about him today and invited Lindsey Graham to lie his way out of it.
But, Senator, he did bring you up, not specifically, but he brought up a comment you made on Sunday. Let's listen.
Yeah. The idea you turn on the television and see senior senators and congressmen saying, if such and such happens, there'll be blood in the street. Where the hell are we?
Senator, he's referring to you. What is he talking about? I guess it was a comment you made Sunday when asked about whether President Trump is arrested or indicted.
Yeah, so what I said Sunday was I reject violence.
That's a lie. He never said that on Sunday. Lindsey Graham never said that Americans reject violence, and he never said I reject violence. Here's the rest of Lindsey Graham's answer tonight.
But I also reject a double standard here. So if they try to prosecute President Trump for mishandling classified information after the Clinton debacle, when she was Secretary of State, people in this country will lose faith in law enforcement.
That is another Lindsey Graham lie. That is not what Lindsey Graham said. On Sunday, Lindsey Graham did not say if Donald Trump is prosecuted, people in this country will lose faith in law enforcement. Here are the words that Lindsey Graham actually said on Fox on Sunday that he is now so afraid of, he dares not to say them again.
And I'll say this. If there's a prosecution of Donald Trump for mishandling classified information after the Clinton debacle, which you presided over and did a hell of a good job, there'll be riots in the streets.
Fox owns that video. Fox owns the video of Lindsey Graham saying there'll be riots in the streets. Fox could have showed that video to Lindsey Graham tonight. But Fox will not show that video again. That's not the way Rupert Murdoch does business. There'll be riots in the streets. That was Sunday night. Tonight, Lindsey Graham changes that to people in this country will lose faith in law enforcement. Lindsey Graham turned Republicans into the riots in the streets party this week, and now he's trying to run away from what he said. And today, Joe Biden made sure that people understand what Lindsey Graham was talking about when he was predicting or advocating riots in the streets. President Biden talked about the Trump riot that already happened on January 6th at the United States Capitol.
Cops attacked and assaulted, speared with flagpoles, sprayed with mace, stomped on, dragged, brutalized. Police lost their lives as a result of that day. Police lost their lives. One of the officers said it was worse than anything he had experienced in war in Iraq. So let me say this to my MAGA Republican friends in Congress. Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you won't condemn what happened on the 6th. Don't tell me. Can't do it. For God's sake, whose side are you on? Whose side are you on? Look, you're either on the side of a mob or the side of the police. You can't be pro-law enforcement and pro-insurrection. You can't be a party of law and order and call the people who attacked the police on January 6th patriots. You can't do it. What are we teaching our children? It's just that simple. And now it's sickening to see the new attacks on the FBI, threatening the life of law enforcement agents and their families for simply carrying out the law and doing their job. Look, I want to say this as clear as I can. There's no place in this country, no place, for endangering the lives of law enforcement. No place. None, never, period. I'm opposed to defunding the police. I'm also opposed to defunding the FBI. The idea you turn on the television and see senior senators and congressmen saying, if such and such happens, there'll be blood in the street. Where the hell are we?
It is Wednesday, the 31st of August of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Yeah, even the royals understood the danger of mixing state with church. They absolutely did find out. Speaking of finding out, wow. Where are we, Joe? I'll tell you where we are. And this is how we find out. We are here in technically the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we begin the day's proceedings. A little update on the personal biz going on here in the real life of our lives right here in Rogue River. Visited with my mom yesterday and sat with her for several hours, and she was pretty much unconscious. So they had to rouse her a few times. Her O2 intake got pretty low, so they had to put her back on oxygen, the little thing through your nostrils. So I would sort of like yell at her and go, "Mom, breathe through your nose," and she would snort a little bit. When I got there, they were working on her. Apparently the rehab and occupational rehab, the physical therapy, occupational rehab people had been working on her, and she started not feeling well. So that was not good. And they roused her and did some work on her and put some stuff in her IV and stopped putting some stuff that was going into her IV. And she roused a bit, but she was still pretty out of it. Tried to get her to eat, but she wasn't have much of an appetite, and that was a bit concerning because my mom, it's her favorite food, so she wasn't feeling too well. Had to remind her to breathe through her nose a few times. They had to put her on the little O2 thing, the tubes that go into your nostrils. Her O2 intake had dropped pretty damn low there a few times, and you'd hear the buzzing or the ringing or whatever it was. The technology let you know. It's like, breathe through your nose, Mom. So, I was there to remind her to do that. So when I called back there, though, after dinner time, she was feeling pretty good. And she had fielded a few phone calls in that interim, or in that time period around, after dinner time. And that was rather heartening. So we'll see how it goes when we visit earlier this morning than we did yesterday. Yesterday we got out of the mothership a bit later than we wanted because I'll tell you why. There's dogs to be taken care of. And sometimes they don't adhere to the time clock that we mere humans impose upon our existence. Damn dogs. But we love them, and if they gotta go, they gotta go. And you don't want them going where you don't want them going. That's how we put it here in the rural parts of America, maybe even in the urban too. I'm sure that it is. Alrighty, so what's happening in the world? Well, my God. It was not pestilence. It was not massive, biblical floods taking out whole Pakistani villages and mountain regions. Yikes. Happening here too, but don't mention climate change because that's a hoax. Yeah. I don't know. If there were people actively trying to, rid the world of mass amounts of people, I suppose if you advocated for doing nothing when a calamity can be averted in which, tens of millions more people will succumb to it, I suppose you'd advocate for that and probably spend a lot of money convincing people that what they're seeing is not what they're seeing. Oh, you think that the climate is changing? Yeah, we think it is. And you think it's man-made? Well, we could have done something to stop exacerbating it at least. Termites understand how to control the environment better than we do. Jeez. I don't know. Do termites have volition, free will? Because maybe that's an argument against it. And if they do have volition and free will, what the hell is wrong with us? I don't know. Just don't know. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and give you a rundown on what we have in store for you today here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Yes, Lindsey Graham, as laid out by Lawrence. You don't want to get on Lawrence's bad side. Just warning you. Yeah, Lindsey lied because he's afraid of his own words. He is. On the rest of the menu, Dominion Voting Systems deposed Tucker Carlson, Jeanine Pirro, and others in its $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit. A House Oversight Subcommittee called for vigorous cryptocurrency fraud oversight. And the Justice Department will no longer allow political appointees to go to fundraisers and other campaign events. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a European plan for floating gas terminals raises climate fears, let alone the aesthetics. If they're whining about windmills, they're not going to whine about refineries floating just offshore. And China has placed millions of its citizens under renewed lockdown following fresh outbreaks of COVID-19. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left of that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would really help us, because we like to pay our bills. And I'll tell you why. Because when we pay our bills, we fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed not only against the United States of America, but democracy around the world. And we're doing our small part in being a bulwark against that. I admit, yes, indeed, a violent takeover of everything that we hold near and dear. And we thank you for your generosity in allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. Anyway, thank you for your generosity. We need the help. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos 10 minutes before showtime. And you can find those show notes and links by following me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, because the links to my Daily Kos page is right there. Right there. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. And, of course, the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library can be found at the Internet Archive at archive.org. That's the general mailing address for electronic types. Right there. Just look for Netroots Radio. Alrighty, alrighty, where'd that come from? Probably the rural part of my existence. Alrighty, let us now tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It is out of the Washington Post by Rachel Weiner and Jeremy Barr. Some of the biggest stars on Fox News are being compelled to answer questions about their coverage of the 2020 presidential election as a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit from an election technology company that claims its reputation was ruined by the network's airing of baseless fraud allegations picks up steam. Lawyers for Dominion Voting Systems last week questioned hosts Jeanine Pirro and Tucker Carlson, while former Fox Business Network host Lou Dobbs and Fox News' Sean Hannity are scheduled for depositions on Tuesday and Wednesday, according to court filings. They are among the on-air personalities that Dominion says defamed it, either by falsely claiming the company conspired to rig the election against Donald Trump, or by repeatedly hosting guests who made such claims. But Dominion has also deposed former and current Fox personnel who never subscribed to such claims, including longtime news anchor Shepard Smith, who left Fox nearly 3 years ago and now works for CNBC, as well as behind-the-scenes players like producers and bookers in what appears to be an effort to probe the internal culture and reporting practices of the highest-rated cable news network. Dominion's lawyers seem to want to show a pattern of practice of Fox disregarding the facts, said a person with knowledge of the deposition process who spoke that no one tell who they are because they are a confidential source. The company has obtained reams of internal emails and text messages sent by Fox employees, some of which it claimed in one filing provided, quote, evidence that Fox knew the lies it was broadcasting about Dominion were false. Well, that's what lies are, aren't they? Fox denies this, saying Dominion cherry-picked the evidence. Oh, you cherry-picked our lies. Lawyers have posed questions to interviewees that center on the gaps between what they said privately in those messages and what they said on air to millions of viewers. Representatives for Dominion declined to comment on the purpose of the depositions because they speak for themselves, as one likes to say. Fox, meanwhile, has vigorously defending itself against the company's charges in the court of public opinion, because that's where they like it. Dan Webb, a veteran trial lawyer recently added to Fox's defense team, said the network was merely reporting on a hugely important story that was propelled by Trump and his allies' loud allegations of a rigged election, with no pushback about the fact that it was all a lie. Okay. There are very few events in the last 50 years in this country that I think are more newsworthy than our president alleging that our entire democratic system was put on its head by a voting machine company stealing votes, Webb told the Post. Well, that's sort of throwing down the gauntlet now, isn't it? In a statement, Fox said, "We are confident we will prevail as freedom of the press is foundational to our democracy and must be protected. In addition to the damage claims of being outrageous, unsupported, and not rooted in sound financial analysis." In other words, Dominion Voting Systems has more than rattled their cage. Fatima Hussein of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A House Oversight Subcommittee asked regulators and industry leaders yesterday, Tuesday, to explain what they are doing to stop cryptocurrency fraud and other scams perpetrated on consumers. Illinois Rep. Raja Krishnamurti, head of the Economic and Consumer Policy Subcommittee, asked leaders of the Treasury Department, Securities and Exchange Commission, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and Federal Trade Commission for more information on the steps they are taking to curb the growth of fraud and consumer abuse linked to cryptocurrencies, which is a nice way of saying, what are you doing about these fraud schemes that are, well, nothing more than pyramid schemes? The inquiries come as the cryptocurrency market has seen immense volatility, as Bitcoin lost nearly half of its value at one point this year, and other cryptocurrencies fell even more. Despite these vulnerabilities, the federal government has been slow to curb cryptocurrency scams and frauds. Existing federal regulations do not comprehensively or clearly cover cryptocurrencies under all circumstances, reads one letter addressed to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. 5 of the biggest cryptocurrency exchanges were also sent inquiry letters requesting documents on company policies regarding the removal of fake accounts. A report on the impacts of cryptocurrencies and other digital assets on financial markets and illicit finance is expected to be released in the coming weeks. In March, President Biden issued an executive order calling for several agencies to look at ways to regulate digital assets and gave them 180 days to do so. On Monday, the FBI warned that criminals are more frequently exploiting vulnerabilities on certain decentralized finance platforms to steal cryptocurrency. Several major legislative proposals were offered in Congress this year as well. In June, Senators Kristen Gillibrand and Cynthia Lumis proposed the Responsible Financial Innovation Act, which would create legal definitions of digital assets and virtual currencies, would require the IRS to adopt guidance on merchant acceptance of digital assets and charitable contributions, and would make a distinction between digital assets that are commodities and those that are securities. Lindsey Whitehurst of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The Justice Department will no longer allow political appointees to go to fundraisers and other campaign events under restrictions handed down yesterday, Tuesday, that are aimed at maintaining the department's independence from politics. Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is currently overseeing investigations, including the FBI search of Trump's home, which is really a compound and a resort, and the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, which was really an insurrection. But who's reporting that anymore? Said in a memo that the restrictions are to ensure that politics, both in fact and appearance, won't affect the way the law is enforced or how inquiries are carried out. Appointees hired under presidential administrations, rather than making long careers at the Justice Department, have been allowed to attend political events passively on their personal time with prior approval. The new policy bans attendance altogether. It also removes an exception that allowed people with close family members running for office to attend political events during presidential election years, and it bars attending such events on the evening of Election Day. On his first day in office more than a year ago, Garland vowed to prioritize the Justice Department's political independence after the departure of Trump, who had insisted on officials' personal loyalty. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Tick, Tock, Die. Every generation has its favorite young people get together and things happen movie in genres from comedy to horror. Think The Big Chill to the Scream movies. In the new Bodies, 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 named after the murder mystery parlor game, we meet Bee, a working-class immigrant, and her new well-off lover, Sophie, on their way to an estate owned by the family of one of Sophie's friends, David, for a hurricane party. On arrival, we're introduced to a variety of Gen Z characters, including podcaster Alice and her definitely not Gen Z boyfriend, Greg. The alcohol and drugs are flowing, the winds are rising, and the power goes out just as their Bodies game is beginning. What could possibly go wrong? After the game degenerates, Bee finds David outside with his throat cut, which leads to a dysfunctional query as to who killed him, where the characters' petty grievances and distrust of one another come to the fore. While the film has a foot in the horror genre and builds a significant body count, the genius here is in the script's dialogue, which is full of social media buzzwords which are appropriately sent up, and where these awful kids reveal themselves as vacuous, incompetent, and self-centered, but mostly just rich, or as is self-described in one wonderful exchange, upper middle class, as one set of parents worked at a university, but one that's public. There are spot-on performances here from Amanda Stenberg, Maria Bakalova, and Pete Davidson, plus music and cinematography that enhance the whole morass. Its concluding big tell puts a giant period on the pointlessness of these people's existence. About Bodies, 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 another reviewer said, just visualize and then there were none in the Instagram era. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
This is your fast-track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. This is our back-to-school special episode. We'll talk about why COVID testing is about to become a school problem.
And then there's some good news about kids' risk for long COVID. It's pretty low.
If you've got young kids, you've probably already started buying fresh notebooks and maybe a new backpack. It's back to school time. And you've probably bought into some worry, too.
Schools are large group settings, and group settings are good places for COVID outbreaks with the infectious subvariant BA.5 running around. You probably got alert letters last spring saying someone in your kid's class tested positive, and if your kid was a close contact, go get your child tested too.
Easy rapid testing is a good way to contain outbreaks, and we all want to keep kids and teachers safe and keep schools open.
True, but we're beginning to see some problems coming up with this containment strategy. Let me start with Ashish Jha, the physician who's the White House COVID response coordinator. He got on Twitter this week to say he's ready to send his kids back to school, and he wanted to emphasize ways to do that safely. His first point was about vaccines. The shots lower infection rates in kids and do a great job at blocking serious illness. But this is problem number one. Children are not getting their shots. The fully vaccinated rate for kids aged 5 through 11 is just 30%. For kids under 5 who recently became eligible for shots, it's even worse, just about 1%. Things look better for kids 12 through 17. Their vaccination rate jumps to 60%. But for those younger kids, the low rates mean a lot are showing up in school without the first and best line of defense.
So that raises the risk of outbreaks, doesn't it?
It does, and that brings up Ja's second point. The best way to keep spread low and reduce outbreaks is testing. And the U.S. government has up to now bought tens of millions of tests and made them available to the public. And those purchases created a market that encouraged companies to make even more tests. But that's going to change. Ja, the same guy pushing the importance of testing, told CNN that sometime in the fall, the government is going to stop buying these things and turn that over to the commercial sector. Not all at once, but in kind of a phased withdrawal.
You'll still be able to get tests, right?
Yeah, but less so at free clinics and more so at drugstores and doctors' offices, the regular medical system. A rapid antigen test kit sells retail for about $20 to $30. The more elaborate PCR tests cost about $250. You'll have to find out if your insurance company will pay for them and submit a claim and then wait for reimbursement.
And probably get into an argument with the insurance company about how much they'll pay you, because that's how insurance works in this country.
Then, if you're one of the 26 million Americans who don't have health insurance, you'll be paying for the test yourself.
You'll still be able to get free tests at schools. The White House says it will supply 5 million rapid antigen tests and 5 million PCR tests to schools that request them, and the schools should give them to you.
But the shift to the regular healthcare system is going to make the testing landscape more complicated. With low childhood vaccination rates, you could be needing a bunch of tests and have to do more running around to get them. New Jersey just announced that unvaccinated school workers and workers in childcare no longer have to get tested routinely. And if other states follow suit, that'll make spotting outbreaks even tougher. So, along with those new school notebooks and pencils, it might be a good idea to stock up on a bunch of COVID tests now, while they're still pretty easy to get. There's a lot of scary and conflicting info out there about long COVID, especially when it comes to children. What do the studies really show us, Tanya?
Well, early in the pandemic, there was good reason to be worried. Some studies showed the risk of long COVID, lingering symptoms such as fatigue, depression, or headaches that continue weeks or months after an infection, could affect as many as 2 out of 3 children who had COVID.
That's a lot. Have those findings held up over time?
Well, more recent studies provide some reassurance that the risk of long COVID in kids is much lower. As SciAm contributor Shannon Hall reported this week, these studies had something many of the earlier studies lacked: a control group.
That seems like a pretty big shortcoming.
It is. When researchers compared the rate of long COVID symptoms in kids who had been infected to those who hadn't, they found few to no differences between the two groups. For example, a large study in the UK published last year found that most of the kids who had COVID felt better within 6 days, and more than 98% were fully recovered by 8 weeks. In contrast, kids who tested negative for COVID actually felt worse at the 4-week mark than those who tested positive.
That's not what I would expect.
Right. And a study earlier this year in Denmark, where school children were strongly encouraged to get tested for COVID twice a week, found that those who tested positive were slightly more likely than those who tested negative to report at least one long COVID symptom 2 months later. But the difference was small.
Were there any other problems with the studies?
Well, one issue is that different agencies use different definitions for long COVID. The CDC defines it as symptoms that begin a month after infection, whereas the World Health Organization describes it as anything that lasts at least 2 months.
I can see why that would be confusing. Is there anything else that could explain the symptoms in COVID-negative kids, if not COVID itself?
Yes, researchers suspect that the kids in the control groups might have simply been suffering from other respiratory viruses. But another possibility is the pandemic's school shutdowns and other societal changes could be causing all sorts of physical symptoms. Another study in the UK found that a whopping 40% of children, including those who'd had COVID recently and those who hadn't, reported feeling worried, sad, or unhappy.
That's pretty sobering. But stepping back, how worried should parents be about long COVID itself?
The findings suggest that long COVID isn't a huge risk to kids, but it can still be a real struggle for those who do develop it. And other research has shown that kids who've had COVID are at a higher risk of complications like diabetes and heart problems than kids who've never been infected. Scientists still have a lot to learn about long COVID in both kids and adults, but some of these findings can at least provide some indication that it may not be as common as some had feared. Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us. Our show is edited by Jeff Del Vicio and Tulika Bose.
Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly, and check out SciAm.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Corporate acolytes and right-wing moralists constantly preach to laboring stiffs about the uplifting dignity of work. Of course, that's dignity as defined and controlled by corporate elites, not by workers, and the reward for it frequently includes on-the-job injuries and death. Not that CEOs and well-heeled investors intend to sicken, maim, and kill thousands of laborers every year, but they certainly do put them in positions that assure such unhappy results. For example, they demand that farm workers go sunrise to sunset picking crops in California's 105-degree desert heat, and that construction crews toil in the muggy, dog days of Florida summers, tarring condo roofs. Low-paid, powerless workers die, but no one in the corporate hierarchy did the deed, right? Heat was the killer. But wait, not only are aloof, air-cool bosses the ones who knowingly subject subordinates to deadly heat, but they're also the ones who hire squads of lobbyists and lawyers to kill simple, inexpensive rules to stop these deaths. Such rules as requiring ample water at work sites, ensuring paid rest breaks in cool spaces, training on-site managers and employees to detect and react to signs of heat stress, and imposing serious punishments for violators. Such sensible steps have repeatedly been proposed as official workplace policy for at least the last 50 years. But intense industry lobbying has killed the adoption of all attempts to prevent what amounts to workplace murder by corporate profiteers. Instead, the U.S. government pretends to protect workers by printing posters admonishing employees to beware of heat, basically telling them goodbye and good luck. This is Jim Hightower saying, but at last a real proposal has been put on the table by more than 110 grassroots groups. See it and join it by contacting Public Citizen, citizen.org.
Thou shalt not kill. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. And on August 25th, that was the sign that a cousin of the man the state of Oklahoma was about to execute was holding in protest. It seemed for a while in August that the execution of James Coddington might not go forward, because on August 3rd, the State Pardon and Parole Board recommended that his life be spared. Indeed, the former director of the state prison system, as well as a former Speaker of the State House of Representatives, publicly spoke out to try to stop the execution. They said Coddington had achieved redemption. But the governor, Kevin Stitt, who had appointed most of the members of the State Pardon and Parole Board, rejected their recommendation. And on August 25th, the state, as planned, executed James Coddington. He was 50. 26 states have abolished the death penalty or have imposed a moratorium on executions. For good reasons. The death penalty makes no one safer. It's racially and economically biased. The system makes mistakes, grave mistakes, and it's irreversible. Oklahoma now is planning to carry out an execution almost every month for the next 2 years. Yes, really, month after month after month after month after month. That state plans to kill someone to demonstrate that killing is wrong. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. 3,500 buses rolled into Washington, D.C. They were loaded with protesters, there to participate in Solidarity Day. The AFL-CIO organized the event to coincide with the Labor Day weekend. They issued a statement, "Why We March," outlining labor's demands. The purpose of the day was to bring attention to the concerns of the nation's working people, especially over health care. Other reasons for the march included a call for more public works programs. Another major demand was the end to permanent replacement of striking workers by scabs. Bernie Dinkin, Secretary-Treasurer of the Amalgamated Clothing and Textile Workers Union in Philadelphia, explained, "One of the main purposes for us going down is to let our friends know, our friends in the Democratic Party who are sitting on their laurels, that if they do not support anti-scab legislation, we will vote against them, no matter what they've done in the past." The most important aim of the event was to show worker strength and solidarity. A similar showing of solidarity had taken place in the nation's capital 10 years before. After President Reagan fired striking air traffic controllers, a September 1981 rally had drawn more than 250,000 people. The 1991 action brought out similar numbers. Despite the 95-degree weather, tens of thousands converged on the nation's capital. They came from across the nation and 30 countries. 100 buses and a specially chartered train made the trip from Philadelphia. Noticeable among the crowd were members of the United Steelworkers Union with their gold and blue shirts. 180 different labor, religious, and civil rights groups stood up on that day for the rights of working people. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures to be somewhat cooler than yesterday. Somewhere around 98 to 100. We went to about 103 yesterday at one point, so let's hope that we are indeed cooler. We continue under an active air quality alert, and that means that the wildfire smoke is and has been blowing our way in thick amounts and is acrid. Ugh, we hate it. Anyway, it looks like possibly they may be getting a handle on these wildfires west of us. Let us only hope. Abundant sunshine throughout the day with winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight with lows in the low 60s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then mainly sunny tomorrow with highs over 100, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We have not had an update on coronavirus confirmed cases nor deceased, but we will, and when we do, we will report it to you. Grass pollen is rated low outside the window in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is moderate at 70 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at level 7. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.9 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 75%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 74 degrees and fair. Paris is 82 and sunny. Rome is 85 and fair. Kyiv is 72 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 70 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 84 and fair. Tokyo is 82 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 56 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 58 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York is 80 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Kathy Busewitz of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. As winter nears, European nations, desperate to replace the natural gas they once bought from Russia, have embraced a short-term fix, a series of roughly 20 floating terminals that would receive liquefied natural gas from other countries and convert it into heating fuel. Yet the plan, with the first floating terminal set to deliver natural gas by year's end, has raised alarm among scientists who fear the long-term consequences for the environment. They warn that these terminals would perpetuate Europe's reliance on natural gas, which releases climate-warming methane and carbon dioxide when it's produced, transported, and burned.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. China has placed millions of its citizens under renewed lockdown following fresh outbreaks of COVID-19. The measures affected about half of the 6 million residents of the port city of Dalian, along with an undisclosed number in a couple of cities in Hebei province, both around 3 hours from the capital Beijing. Dalian's lockdown was due to last 5 days, although authorities have in the past extended restrictions depending on the number of new cases. Such measures are mandated under China's zero COVID policy, which contrasts starkly with moves by other nations to coexist with the virus through gradual easing of restrictions, vaccinations, improved therapeutics, and voluntary isolation. China has largely kept its borders closed to foreign visitors, while requiring those who do come to submit to more than a week of quarantine in hotels where sanitary conditions are often poor. Masking and regular testing are also standard, and anyone found to have been in close contact with a person confirmed to have the virus is forcibly transported to field hospitals. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.